Our adopted daughter chose her wealthy birth parents, then returned 8 years later to crash my husband's funeral with a lawyer. Hey Reddit. Not too long ago, I lost my husband. And right in the middle of his funeral, our former adoptive daughter showed up and caused a huge scene. I'll get into what I said and did in response in just a bit, but first, I think it's only fair to give you some background on our family so you can understand where I'm coming from. I'm a 45-year-old woman, and my husband, also 45, was my high school sweetheart. We tied the knot when I was 21, and by the time I hit 25, we were ready to start a family. But things didn't go as planned. After nearly 2 years of trying with no success, we found out that both of us were dealing with infertility. We could have gone the IVF route, but we chose not to. We wanted to do something meaningful, something that would give a child a second chance at life. That's why we decided to adopt intentionally, and we went through the foster care system because we knew there were so many kids out there who just needed someone to believe in them. That's how we met Elena. She was just 4 years old when she came into our lives through the foster system. Her biological parents were addicted to drugs and had no family members willing to step in for her. We fostered her for a year, and when she turned 5, we officially adopted her. Her birth parents chose to terminate their rights, saying they didn't think they'd ever be capable of raising her and felt she'd have a better shot with us. We went through with a closed adoption, meaning there'd be no further contact between them and Elena. And for a long time, they respected that. But everything changed when Elena turned 18. It's still tough for me to talk about, but her biological parents reached out to her and asked if she'd be willing to come live with them. They claimed to have cleaned up their lives and wanted another shot at being a family. And even though my husband and I had been the only real parents she'd ever known, Elena chose to leave us and move in with them. We didn't find out until after she was already gone. She made the decision in secret, and by the time we realized what had happened, there was nothing we could do. I had a gut feeling about why she picked them over us. It wasn't just about reconnecting. It was because they were wealthy. There's no sugarcoating that. Somewhere along the way, they'd gone from being flat broke and addicted to becoming part of some successful business family. Elena had 2 younger biological siblings, a brother who was 6 years younger and a sister who was 8 years younger. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm glad they turned their lives around, truly. But their comeback story came at a cost for us. Elena walked away from the only parents who had raised her. It broke both of our hearts. My husband and I never really got over it. We just had to accept it because there was no other choice. She was 18, legally an adult, and we couldn't force her to stay. And the more we reflected on it, the less shocking it all felt. Ever since she was a kid, Elena had always leaned toward the material side of life. It wasn't such a big deal when she was little, but by the time she hit middle school, it became obvious she had a taste for the finer things. At first, it didn't really bother us. Thankfully, we were financially stable and lived comfortably. But as she got older, her wants turned into demands, and those demands kept getting more outlandish. We had to start putting limits in place because she was beginning to expect things we just couldn't deliver. We were doing well enough, sure, but we weren't the kind of family that could hop on a plane for exotic vacations at the drop of a hat or hand over a big allowance so she could party and blow cash on nights out. By the time she was 16, we were already struggling to manage her behavior and keep her grounded. We didn't want her turning into someone irresponsible or entitled, but that's where things seemed to be heading. Then, right around her 18th birthday, things took a turn. That's when her birth parents reached out. They sent her an email, telling her about their past, their progress, and how deeply they regretted giving her up. Apparently, losing her had been the wake-up call they needed. Their families had cut them off, but with the help of a few friends and well-wishers, they started over from scratch. At first, they couldn't land decent jobs, but they fought their way up. By the time they were expecting their second child, they had steady jobs and a stable income. Eventually, they launched their own kitchen supplies business, and it just kept growing. 14 years after giving Elena up, they finally felt secure enough to reach out and try to bring her back into their lives. They were hesitant at first. They knew it could be a bad idea. After all, the adoption was closed, and legally, they weren't supposed to contact her unless she reached out first. But I guess they couldn't wait for that to happen. So they pulled strings and found ways to locate Elena just so they could talk to her again. The saddest part? Instead of being honest with us, Elena kept it all a secret. She started meeting with them in private and slowly built a relationship behind our backs. That's how she found out how wealthy they'd become. 4 months after her 18th birthday, she packed up and left, choosing them over us without so much as a real conversation. I remember the day like it just happened yesterday, the moment Elena sat us down and told us she'd made up her mind. She said she was going back to her biological family to give them a real chance. The shock hit me like a punch to the gut. She handed us the email they'd sent her on her birthday, and we just sat there in disbelief, reading it. We never saw it coming. What made it worse was how cold she was about it all. She didn't care about our heartbreak or even acknowledge how blindsided we were. She casually told us that while we thought she'd been hanging out with her friends, she'd actually been spending her time with them, her real parents. And according to her, they were a better fit for who she was. She said she was born into their family for a reason and wanted to correct what she now saw as a mistake. Then, just like that, she told us not to contact her again. She said she needed to let go of the past in order to fully embrace this new life with her birth family. And within a few days, she had packed up her room and left. Gone. We didn't even consider legal action at the time. What was the point? Sure, we might have had some ground to stand on, like how her biological parents had found out where she was without any kind of formal consent, but none of it mattered. She was an adult now. And she had made her choice. It wasn't until later that we really started putting the pieces together. We checked her social media and talked to a few of her old friends, and the truth hit us hard. Her biological family wasn't just doing better, they were extremely wealthy. And that's why she left. That's what she chose. She was living the kind of life we'd always tried to protect her from: partying constantly, taking luxury trips, spending money like it grew on trees. All the things we'd said no to, not out of cruelty, but because we were trying to raise her right. That's when it really sunk in. 14 years. 14 years of pouring our love, our time, and our energy into raising her, and for what? She turned her back on us the moment something shinier came along. It was devastating. But it was the truth. And we had to accept it. Nearly 8 years have passed since then. It wasn't easy, but we managed to move forward with our lives. That doesn't mean we stopped missing her, of course not. There were moments where we'd still wonder if she'd ever come back, but eventually, even those thoughts faded. After everything she did, deep down, we knew there was no fixing what had been broken. It hurt too much. Then, 3 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with liver cancer. I did everything I could to help him fight it. We tried every treatment, held on to hope as long as we could. But in the end, the treatment stopped working. And about a week ago, I lost him. He was well known, and most people who knew him also knew what he'd been going through. That's why I find it hard to believe that Elena didn't know. She still kept in touch with a couple of people from her school days, and their families had reached out to me more than once, offering their condolences and support. So I'm sure the news must have reached her. She just chose not to say anything. Honestly, I didn't have the energy to be angry about it at the time. I was too focused on handling the arrangements and trying to stay afloat emotionally. A few days after he passed, we held his funeral. And that's when Elena finally showed up after 8 long years. But not for the reason you'd hope. She didn't come to grieve. She didn't come to say goodbye. She came to claim her share of the inheritance. I was stunned to see her there. I won't lie. But my husband had been smart. He saw this coming, and he made sure to plan for it. He left behind a letter specifically for her. I'll tell you what it said in a moment, but first, I need to paint a picture of how she arrived at the funeral so you understand just how inappropriate the whole thing was. She was dressed in all black, which you'd think was respectful enough. But the issue wasn't what she was wearing. It was the fact that she brought a lawyer with her. Yes, a lawyer, to my husband's funeral. She actually came prepared to argue with me at his service because she assumed I was going to keep all of his money and property for myself. When she walked up to offer her condolences, I already sensed something was off. I told her we could talk later, hoping to delay whatever she was building up to. But she wasn't having it. She insisted we talk right then and there. And when I tried to explain that I was a little busy, burying my husband, she went off. Started ranting about how I was just trying to avoid the conversation because I didn't want to share the inheritance. Said the least I could do now was include her in whatever he'd left behind. She was loud, dramatic, and completely disrespectful. So I handed her the letter right then and there, the one my husband had left just for this. Now, here's what was in it. My husband, God bless him, had predicted this might happen. So he'd written a letter to go along with his official will. In that letter, written in his own hand, he stated in no uncertain terms that every single cent, every bit of property, everything he owned, was going to me. He didn't name anyone else, but he made it clear, if someone hadn't been part of his life during his final years, especially during his illness, they had no right to expect anything from him. He owed them nothing. Elena's lawyer read the letter, and let me tell you, he didn't look too pleased. The will was airtight, and this personal letter only reinforced it. Everything was locked down. I felt a small sense of relief watching them realize that. Because the truth is, in those 8 years since she walked out, everything had changed. My husband and I had taken over a branch of his uncle's business when he expanded into our city. We ran it well, it was successful, and it brought in good money. Sure, a lot of our savings went toward his cancer treatment, but even after all that, we were still doing more than fine. Our lifestyle had improved a lot, and we were living comfortably. At this point, I swear Elena could sniff out money like a bloodhound. It's like she has the sixth sense for who's doing well financially, and then she shows up acting like she's entitled to a piece of it. That's exactly what happened with her biological family, and now she was trying to pull the same stunt with us. Any halfway competent lawyer would have known that she had zero legal grounds to demand anything, especially considering she was 26 now and hadn't spoken to us in 8 years. I honestly don't know what that guy was thinking, showing up to a funeral with her like that. But once she read the letter my husband left behind, I could see her hopes vanish in real time. She read it through a couple of times, and then the waterworks started. And I'm not talking about quiet tears or sniffling into a tissue, no, she started wailing like a child and threw herself at me, trying to hug me while sobbing into my shoulder. She kept saying how sorry she was, how ungrateful she'd been, how much she regretted walking out on us. She said she'd learned her lesson and just wanted to be there for me now. She apologized over and over for not visiting us these past 8 years, and for never reaching out when she heard about my husband's illness. But by then, it was too late. Way too late. And honestly, the timing of it all disgusted me. One moment she's raising her voice about an inheritance, and the next she's acting heartbroken over the man she hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. It felt fake, like she was putting on a show in hopes I'd soften and let her back into my life. I didn't know exactly what was going on with her, but I could tell something had gone wrong. Otherwise, she never would have come back, especially not like this, dragging a so-called lawyer with her and demanding money. I realized all that while she was still clutching at me, sobbing. And I couldn't take it. I shoved her off of me. She looked shocked, like she couldn't believe I'd pushed her away. But I didn't care anymore. I told her loud and clear that she needed to stay away from me. I didn't care who heard me. I was furious, and I let it out. I told her I didn't want her in my house, and I didn't want her turning my husband's funeral into some twisted drama. This wasn't the place or time for her theatrics, and I needed her to leave now. Then she made the mistake of saying she was family. I laughed. I laughed right in her face. I told her that family is either bound by blood or built through love. She had never been related to us by blood, and as for love, well, there had been a time, sure. We did love her like our own. But when she left us to be with her biological family, just because they had more money, she made it clear where her loyalties were. That day, 8 years ago, she erased any illusion of family between us. So no, she wasn't family anymore. Not to me. After I said that, she finally left. And once she was gone, a few people came over to comfort me. I was clearly shaken, and they could see that. The rest of the day was a blur. I just wanted to get through the funeral and crawl into bed. And once I did, I crashed hard emotionally and physically drained. When I woke up the next morning, I noticed a bunch of messages from a number I didn't recognize. I'm guessing it was Elena. How she got my contact information, I have no idea. But she sent me a lot of messages, and turns out I was right about her being in trouble. Apparently, things with her birth family had gone south years ago. They'd supported her lifestyle for a while, but after a few years, they got tired of watching her burn through money like it meant nothing. She didn't want to change. Sure, she got a job just to quiet their complaints, but she never took it seriously. She spent everything she made just trying to keep up her image, fancy clothes, parties, whatever made her look like she was living a dream. Eventually, they'd had enough. They sat her down and told her it was time to move out, time to live on her own. They made it clear they were still open to having a relationship with her, but it had to be real. It couldn't just be about money. They were right. She had been using them. She blew up, had a huge fight, and stormed out. And because of her pride, she never reached back out to them. They didn't chase her either. And she knew she couldn't come back to us. Not after what she'd done. She was too embarrassed, too ashamed. So for the past 4 years, she'd been trying to make it on her own. But it hadn't gone well. She didn't have a college degree, and the job market had been tough. Even when she found out my husband was sick, she thought about contacting us. But fear of rejection stopped her. She said she was sorry. That her apology was genuine. That she regretted everything she put us through. But she also told me she was heartbroken that I told her she wasn't our family anymore. Said it cut her deeper than anything else. And apparently, that lawyer she brought with her wasn't really her lawyer, he was just a friend who had suggested coming with her for support. The friend she brought with her, the one posing as a lawyer, had apparently come along to try and talk some sense into me before she considered challenging the will. Elena already knew deep down that she didn't have a legal leg to stand on, especially after everything that had happened. But after speaking to me and attending her father's funeral, she said she didn't want the inheritance anymore. She just wanted forgiveness. She wanted me to take back what I'd said about her not being part of our family. She told me the only reason she showed up in the first place asking for money was because she'd planned to use it to go to college. She said she was tired of working dead-end jobs and wanted to finally do something worthwhile with her life. According to her, this was her shot at turning things around. But here's the truth, I couldn't bring myself to forgive her. Not then. And even now, I'm still unsure. It's been a week since all this happened, and I've been stuck in my head, going back and forth, trying to decide whether or not to take back what I said. What if I didn't? What if I stood by my words and didn't let her back into my life? Update 1. Hi Reddit. First, I want to thank everyone who took the time to read my story, comment, offer advice, or just send a kind word. I'm deeply grateful for all the support and for those who sent condolences. I know my husband is in a better place now. And while I miss him terribly, I also believe that if he were still here, I'd have found this whole situation a lot easier to deal with. But I also believe it's important to honor his wishes, and it was clear to me that he didn't want anything more to do with Elena. And honestly, neither do I. When Elena showed up, I let my emotions get the better of me. She arrived out of nowhere, right after I lost the love of my life, and I wasn't thinking clearly. But when I really sat with it, I realized she didn't deserve forgiveness. Not after everything. She came to the funeral not out of love, not to pay her respects, but to claim money from a man she had completely abandoned. And that tells me everything I need to know. So I finally responded to her message. I told her I wasn't going to take back anything I said. I wasn't going to forgive her. She had made her choices, dug her own grave, so to speak, and now she had to lie in it. Nobody else could fix what she broke. I wished her the best in life, but I also told her not to contact me again. Then I blocked the number she'd used to reach out. As for how she found my phone number or even our address, since my husband and I had moved a few years ago, I had no idea at first. But I was determined to find out. And when I did, there would be consequences. Update 2. Well, I found out who gave Elena my information, and to my complete surprise, it was my mother. I didn't expect that at all. She knew about everything that had happened over the years. But when I confronted her, she explained that Elena had told her she just wanted to apologize. My mom had no idea she was planning to show up and demand her share of the inheritance. She apologized to me sincerely. Said she would never have given out my contact info if she thought it would cause me pain. And I believed her. She's in her 70s now. She's been through a lot, and I've already lost my husband. I didn't want to start a fight with her too. Her heart was in the right place, even if her judgment wasn't. I forgave her. Now, if it had been anyone else who gave Elena that information, my response would have been very different. Update 3. It's been 6 days since I blocked Elena's number. I really didn't expect to hear from her again. But today, she showed up at my door. I didn't let her in at first. She just stood there crying, begging to talk, saying she was sorry again. I kept telling her that I couldn't handle it, that I needed space, that I wasn't ready. But she didn't leave. And I know this might sound strange, but as I stood on the other side of the door, listening to her sob, I didn't hear a grown woman. I heard the little girl we'd brought home all those years ago. The one who cried when she was scared. And before I knew it, I opened the door. She came in and sat down, still crying. After a few minutes, when she finally calmed down, she started apologizing all over again. I had to cut her off. I told her the only reason I let her in was so she'd stop crying in my doorway, not because I was ready to forgive her. I told her that too much had happened, and things weren't magically going to go back to the way they were just because she said sorry. I told her that right now, I needed time and space. That I had just lost the man I loved. That my grief was still raw. And before I could even think about rebuilding anything with her, I needed to take care of myself and figure out how to move forward without him. She sat there in silence for a bit, and then she said she understood. She wrote her contact info down on a piece of paper and said she'd wait for me to reach out if and when I was ready. Then she left. I don't know if I'll ever use that phone number. But I don't regret letting her in and having that conversation. I think we both needed a little bit of closure. Update 4. Hi again, Reddit. It's been 5 months since I lost my husband. Slowly, I've been trying to put the pieces of my life back together. I'm still not sure what normal even means anymore. Because for me, normal always included my husband's steady presence, his laugh, his voice, the way he made everything feel okay. Now it's just me. I'm doing my best. The business we ran together, his uncle's branch, I've taken it over completely. That helps keep me busy. The rest of the time, I read, watched TV, or spend time with family and friends. I'm adjusting, day by day. Now, the big question, have I reached out to Elena? Or has she reached out to me? No, we haven't spoken. I haven't contacted her, and she hasn't tried again, either. We're still holding to that silent agreement, and maybe that's for the best, for now. Maybe someday, when I'm ready, I'll be able to forgive her. But right now, I'm just not in that place. And I've learned that that's okay. I don't have to rush healing. I just want to focus on my life, one day at a time.